channel Maybe Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we have part 2 of our very exciting SPFBO Saturday series with 4 other of the 10 finalists. If you don't know, SPFBO stands for Self-Published Fantasy Blog-Off. It's a big self-published competition where there are 300 books submitted, and it goes down to 10 finalists and then 1 winner. And we have 4 of those 10 finalists, basically royalty, with us today. And we can't wait to pester them with all of our questions. But before we do that, I wanted to give everyone a chance to kind of do a self-introduction, say who you are, what the book you submitted was, and anything else you want to add about what you do in the book space. So maybe we could go Katie, Ed, Ryan, Clayton. Does that work for you all?
Yeah.
All right. You want to take it away, Katie?
Sure, go first. So yes, I am Katie Andrews. I submitted Hills of Heather and Bone, which is like a cozy, dark, cottagecore necromancy kind of thing. So yeah, I normally write like poetry and fantasy, and so this was my first kind of exploration into cozy. It wasn't fully cozy, but we got pretty close. So yeah, that's my book.
My name's Ed. I write under EC Greaves because I was stupid enough not to have ED Greaves. Would have been way better. I wrote Daughter of the Beast, which is a Slavic folklore-inspired coming-of-age tale. It's not quite grimdark. I suppose people have called it grimdark, so I've just rolled with that. It's it's gritty and grotty, but kind of fun. That's me.
My name is Ryan Kirk, and I was the author, or I guess I still am the author of Last Fang of God. And yeah, I think summing it up quickly, it was a story about a father and daughter who have to wander across a hostile land, and it is nowhere near as dark as anything Clayton writes.
I am Clayton Snyder, and I wrote Cold West, which is a fluffy rom-com.
Lies. All right, PL, I'm going to hand it over to you because just also for those watching, PL has to step out today about half hour into our interview. So we want to make sure he gets all of his questions in for these wonderful people before he heads out. So just a disclaimer there, if you're watching, we will miss him dearly. But PL, I want to hand it over to you to get us started. And also, Philip is here. Hi, Philip. Thank you for joining. Hi, Philip.
We should congratulate Philip on just crossing 30K subscribers on his own channel.
Yes.
Congratulations. Yes. And while we're there, Taylor, just quickly, you reached another subscriber milestone yourself recently, didn't you?
I did, yes. I was right below 2,000 for a long time, and it's exploded over it. So thank you. I appreciate
Congratulations. That's awesome. Well, I quickly want to say, first of all, again, apologies. It's my fault totally for being double booked. I certainly want to be here for this whole broadcast. However, I do have to duck at 8:30. But, thank you so much again, all 4 of you for joining us. This is an honor to have the SPFBO 9 finalists. And, of course, just quickly, once more, we did in the earlier broadcast with the other 4 SPFBO finalists. We had the honor of you, but big shout out and thank you to Connor, CM Kaplan, for bringing all the finalists together. So we owe him a real debt of gratitude. Kind of made things easy for us. So shout out to CM if you're watching or see the live later. So thanks again for organizing everything for us. So we appreciate that. So I may be putting people on the spot, not here. I hope not. That isn't my intention. And feel free not to answer or give a vague answer, etc. If you can't give away any trade secrets, things that might be coming up in the future. But actually, it's a question that we never got a chance to fully explore with the other SPFBO finalist group. But it's a question that I was kind of leaning into before, but we had to cut things short. So let me preface by saying, so for some of you, I know you're SPFBO veterans. You've done multiple contests. You've entered other SPFBOs prior to SPFBO 9. So now, as is out there in the space for SPFBO 10, the rules will be changing a bit. So it won't be essentially the first 300 entrants that get to go. It'll be kind of randomly selected. I'm not sure of all the details. I know Mark Lawrence, the wonderful traditionally published author who organized SPFBO, he's felt the need to change things. Excuse me. So now, in saying all that, a lot of you, as I said, have entered the contest before. Perhaps some of you first time. I'm hoping you all had an amazing experience. Obviously, congratulations on being finalists. You're all winners. Is this something that, irrespective of whether you're a first-time entrant, second, third, fifth, 10th, is this something that you would do again? And are you thinking about entering SPFBO 10? Do you have a book to enter? That might obviously play a factor. And if you are willing to do it again, why? And again, if you don't want to give away that you've put your name in because, perhaps you may not be picked because now it's random. But yeah, so we'd like to know a bit about that. So maybe if it's okay, we'll keep the same order as we went with giving the introductions. So you're on the hot spot, Katie.
Shouldn't have come in first. This is what I get for being early. So this is my second time entering. I made semifinalist in 2022, so that was exciting. Didn't think I was going to get far this year, and then here we are. So I don't have anything else to enter, which I kind of knew with this book, and Hills of Heather and Bone was a complete surprise to me. I did not think I was going to write another book because I had a trilogy to work on. So this was my kind of just like second chance entering. So yeah, I mean, if I write another kind of standalone or first in a series, I would definitely love to enter again later, but it probably will be several years because I'm not a fast writer. And I also get easily distracted with writing things that are not on my list of things to write. So it's been a good experience so far. Yeah, and if I had another thing to enter, I probably wouldn't this year just because being in the finalist spot is kind of weird because it's like, oh, I made it this far, but I don't want like to overshadow other people and maybe take away a chance for someone who's never entered this contest before or someone who's got something else just to see if they can get further. So probably in a couple years I'll enter. We'll see how it is then. But I'm very excited to see how SPFBOX goes from the outside and not have to stress about waking up super early.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the same there. You have to call it SPFBOX, by the way. It sounds so much better than SPFBOX or 10. But yeah, I don't think I'll enter again. Mostly for what Katie said, I'd prefer not to take someone's spot. But also, I'd have to pay another ghostwriter to write another book for me, and that I'm all out of cash. We don't get paid much here. No, it's one of those things where if you do really well and then you enter again and you get absolutely styled on, I feel as though I would just be like, what? Oh, it was all a fluke. But I think that it all kind of is a fluke anyway, because depending on which judge you get and the order in which the judges read your stuff, you could get cut right away, or you could make it all the way through. So it is kind of random. But I don't know. I think given that it's all meant to be about bringing an eye to indies, it makes sense to show an array of new authors, older authors, more established ones or whatever. But for me, I feel like I had my day in the sun with this. So it would take, I think if I did enter again, it would be in a few years' time and maybe with something completely different, like a totally different vibe or genre.
Yeah, as for me, I've been in, I think this is the third or fourth SPFBO I've been a part of. Had one other semifinalist in a year I don't even remember anymore. But I will not be entering SPFBOX. Thank you, Katie. I will try to remember that. But yeah, somewhere down the road, I certainly might. It is certainly my favorite competition of the year, and I know I will be following SPFBOX very closely. It'll be fun to be a part of it from the sidelines next year.
Yeah, I've I've done this for 4 years, and I think I'm going to take some time off. So, 3 semifinalist spots, 2 finalist spots, and I think I've kind of achieved what I set out to achieve, which was proving to myself that I'm okay at doing what I do. So, So I want to set myself new goals and kind of move ahead with my career and see where things, see how things kind of pan out. So I'm going to just leave it alone for a little bit.
Yeah, and that's valid. I mean, the competition is obviously intense, and it's funny when you make the finals. That's actually when the intensity seems to really begin, because prior to that, there is of course the nerve-wracking waiting for semis to be allocated, and then waiting to see if you're going to move forward. And that's all. It's a pressure cooker in some ways. It's exciting. It's fantastic. And then you make semis for all of you and all the other finalists. And then it's that, am I going to make it out, be the sole person to make it out of my block? And after that, and you folks can clarify this, maybe perhaps later on, and maybe something as well with Taylor after I leave that, you make it, and then it seems to be, from what I can see from the outside as a judge, that so many really cool things happen. Then you all become this really collegial group. You bond. You share each other's highs and lows, a great review, a bad review, but you really truly, not that you have made connections with other people who have made to the finalists, but it's clear from my observations that the finalists connections and the camaraderie is really something special. So but what I do want to ask though is that you're all somewhat of SPFBO veterans, and I'm sure a lot of you, to varying degrees, have been, following the indie scene prior to writing. Maybe, you had entered SPFBO, but you'd already published books. You're kind of monitoring things, and this competition certainly has grown and evolved. It changed since its inception. So, how do you see? What's the difference for you? How do you feel about SPFBO now that for some of you, like Clayton, multiple finalists, making the finals first time? From when you first started, when you first heard about SPFBO, maybe you didn't know as much what it was all about, but okay, this competition seems important. To now being a finalist, what's the difference? Do you look at this competition differently than you did when you first started? Does it mean more? Do you think that it's, like, in terms of its growth and its prominence, what do you think about SPFBO now that you sat in the finalist chair?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember when it first came on my radar. I think it was either 2021, which was when I was publishing my first kind of fantasy book. I had been following Mark Lawrence for a bit because I read Prince of Thorns in high school, really loved it. And that was where I was like, oh, dark fantasy's thing, or grimdark, whatever it is, somewhere in the middle. But I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I'd wanted to enter because I was like, I'm new to the indie scene. I don't really have a community. I'm not sure what's happening. And then I entered, and then Andrew Demerlis like, hey, here's a cool Discord to join. And I'm like, I don't know what Discord is, but this is fun. So just like getting to be in the community feels just the true prize, because you meet so many authors, you get to talk about things with other people who have gone much further along in the competition or have been around in the competition a long time. Definitely from my understanding is it started out very grimdark, which was interesting. I met Jonathan French a couple weeks ago, who was SPFBO 2016 winner. So, very grimdark. Whereas last year we had a cozy win. And so that was really cool just to kind of see like, these different subgenres that people maybe have never heard of winning. And then, of course, with Morgan's this year of fantasy mystery, which I was like, never heard of that before. This is really cool. So just seeing like how tastes kind of have changed with the judges over the years have been really interesting, because it's not something I would have been aware of until I really got into the indie scene and the marketing community, and just like understanding what are readers reading, what are the judges maybe leaning more towards. And then just the two cozy-ish ones kind of also made it into the finals again this year. I was like, okay, guess we can do that. So it has been really cool just from the few years that I've been in it, just to see how it's changed. And then especially with last year of filling up in 45 minutes as opposed to 3 days, or however long it took for the first couple ones to really fill up. So it's exciting to see the growth, and that, more indies can get a part of it. And even if you don't make it to semifinals, you're still like in this pool of 300 books that people can be like, oh, I like that. The first chapter reads has been really cool to follow because I wouldn't have thought of doing that. So kudos to people who are reading, like, you know, all the first 10 pages of a book or the first chapter. That's a lot. So, you know, it's cool just to see like on the other side of like the judging and the people who are participating, like everyone else who's involved in it. So
Yeah, that's pretty much. I'm just going to copy your answers. This is like how I got through school as well. Some of the smart kids. But no, my beanie's weaved with tinfoil because I have a slight conspiracy theory, and that's the fact that whatever gets to the finals in SPFBO tends to start getting reflected in TradPub. Just like a little while after, I've noticed, like Grimdark, I'd never really thought of it as a genre, but then it started being the thing in SPFBO that would come up again and again, and then I noticed it was like this huge thing in trad, and then there was the cozy stuff, and then that sort of kicked off, and I'm expecting that in the next couple of years there'll just be heaps and heaps of Gaslamp murder mystery fantasy coming out in trad like that. I'm calling it now. That's going to be a thing.
Morgan's a trendsetter.
Yeah. It's the power of indie in general is that you can take risks and whatnot, and then if there's prominence, that bleeds into the slower moving but far better financed traditional world. Same with like music and everything. But the thing that I've sort of noticed from following it, like I didn't really know a lot about it. I knew about Mark Lawrence. I'd read Sister and then copied it and made my book with it. But then I noticed that like the amount of community and the amount of focus on all 300 entrants, I never really noticed that from before, because before I would only see the finalists and then the winner, or sometimes some semi-finalists, finalist, winner. But going into it, there's so much community and there's so much like attention on all of those books to begin with. And there are so many websites like Zach Argyle. If you watch this in the future, Zach, can you please send me your PayPal details so I can actually support your fund? they blocked that. The indie fund, they blocked it in New Zealand. I can't donate. They don't take fake money here. But anyway, so he's got like a website with all the graphics of all of them. There are a few others as well. And then, there's like Tom Mock. I think L Lyons was doing one as well. The first chapter reads. There's just so many random little things that people do with all the 300 books that you can kind of find stuff that even might not make it through to our finalists or to win. That will gel with you, and so there's like this massive amount of exposure. It really does serve the purpose it was intended to. There's just exposure on so many different books. Like I've picked up so many. I haven't read them all because I'm super slow at reading, but I've got like this giant Kindle library now, just from this year. So I think that's probably the main thing. Noticing that it's not just about the winners and finalists and stuff. It's the whole lot all the way along, and there's so much community around it. I think now I'm aware of that. I just want to hang out. Like I wouldn't join the next view or whatever, but I'm still going to be in the Discord.
I think the obvious answer after having been a part of it over several years is just seeing how much the community has developed. But I've even noticed, and this was something that I was paying attention to even before the semifinalists were announced, and it feels like even the judges and reviewers have been stepping up their game, because it felt like in the first years that I was entering, oftentimes if a book was maybe DNF'd or didn't sit well with the judges, you would learn almost nothing about it. And it seems like in more recent years, I've seen more and more judges writing, decent length reviews, even of books that don't make it to semis. Mm-hmm. And I know that has been very convenient for me because knowing reviewer tastes and knowing what they like and what they don't like, it has also allowed me to find new authors that I never would have discovered otherwise, which I think is a very exciting development in SPFBO.
Yeah, so here's the fun part about going last. Everybody else has said what I've seen the community grow. I've seen a little bit more expansiveness on the nature of the books that are getting dropped, and a little bit more. I'm not really sure what the word I'm looking for here is, but if the sort of passing it on where this book wasn't for me, but I can see why it's good for fans of this and this and this and this, that sort of thing. Yeah, and as far as its growth, it's actually been amazing. It's been exponential. I remember I kind of came up with that group of writers who were like, Dirk Ashton and Rob Hayes and Josiah Bancroft and so on. Remember them entering and not really knowing anything about it. And at the time, I wasn't really working in fantasy so much as horror, and just kind of curious about it. But watching their journey and the community build around everything that happened, it kind of made me want to work on my career and work more on my craft and everything else. So
yeah, those some amazing input and some amazing answers, and I think listening to all of you, this is why I'm so into the self-published community. SPFBO is one of those things that it's kind of a microcosm of what I love about the whole community, because as you all mentioned, the camaraderie, the discords, the chatting about books, the discovering new authors, all these great things that make the self-published writing community just really special. And obviously it blends and morphs with the greater writing community and all of the traditionally published authors, of which we all are connected to and have friendships and relationships. But yeah, there is something really special about SPFBO and the way it brings a lot of those elements of the best elements of the community together. So yeah, no, thanks so much for answering my questions. I'm going to not only have to run unfortunately, but I am going to turn over to Taylor, my more than capable co-host, who will fortunately get to spend the rest of the time with you. But I just want to quickly say again, before I leave, thank you so much for the honor of coming to join us. And you're all winners. And man, was that a close competition this year. I mean, the scores that we talked about in the earlier podcast, like the scores were all like, so close. And again, I think it was Phil Chafes that mentioned, I think we all concur, it's the quality of the competition. We know, yep, the blogging and the scores are subjective and reviewing subjective, but I think it was indicative of how well everyone wrote and just, the phenomenal books that you all submitted. So kudos to all of you. Congratulations. Flags fly forever. Those stickers aren't going anywhere. So you will always be SPFBO finalists no matter what happens. And that's a huge achievement. So congratulations. So hope I get to speak to you soon. Plan to read as many of the SPFBO 9 finalists that I haven't had the opportunity to read. They're all fantastic books, obviously. And hopefully, and if I do, I certainly will be posting reviews about them on Before I Go blog, etc. So Taylor, thanks again for everything. And I'll be catching you all later. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the chat. And I'll be, of course, watching the replay later on. So thanks for letting me hang out.
Thanks, Bill.
Take care. Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, see you around.
See you around. Bye now.
All right, so before we continue on, I just want to take a couple seconds to put up some of these comments that have been coming in. We have John here who says, had to drop in and show some love for the great indie authors. I second that. Tim is here. Daughter of the Beast was awesome. And then just a comment on Spiffbox, which made me giggle. Where's Joe? He's very invested in it being pronounced Spiffbox, so he needs to be here. JC,
It has to be pronounced that way. Like, it has to be.
It must be. Which Philip is also saying he's gonna put it in his lexicon too. So
it just rolls off the tongue so much easier.
Yeah, I was a diehard SPFBO 9 person because I don't know, like, it just sounded nice to say. But Spiffbox, no, man, it's just too good.
Yep.
Listen, if you make booktube videos, that's too long. Ain't nobody got time for that. It's Spiffbo. And also just a couple other comments here. Philip, who read all of the books himself, which I so much respect. Full disclosure for anyone watching, I am a judge over on Before We Go blog, but Before We Go blog is a collaborative space where there's a whole bunch of judges and we split the books up between us. But Philip did it all by his lonesome, which just incredible. So he says, you're all much better than okay. It was a privilege to read your stories. Your attention to craft and your love of the story shines in each of them, which...
How can one person be such a nice person, eh? Like, it's not fair. You know,
He sucks the
Powerpuff Girls when
niceness
he's
out of other
making.
people.
Yeah, so if he accidentally knocked in like the niceness and threw them into both.
I was like,
Right.
even if he
Not
didn't like my book,
accidentally.
I'm like, he's going to be so nice about it.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I knew for sure out of anything.
Yeah, you're safe. You're safe in Philip's hands. And then also Connor's here.
Well,
We're just talking about you,
maybe
Connor.
just-
It's all about you.
Yeah. As soon as we pour him into, we're like, quick, he's here.
Now we got to stop gossiping. So we did talk a little bit about the fact that you've entered SPFBO before, but I'm curious this time around, what made you pick this particular book to submit? If it was the only one you had to submit, or if you had a couple and you wanted to kind of follow those trends we were talking about. Cozy seems to be doing well, whereas in the beginning it might not have. If you had a choice between several books, why did you choose this particular one? And then if this was the only option that you had, at this point, maybe you've submitted others before, and this was the only one not submitted. What made you decide to go for it this time around? And we don't have to go in order. Whoever wants to take it can take it.
You want me to go
Yeah.
first now? Or you?
I didn't have any other books to submit. I wasn't even going to, honestly wasn't going to enter this year, and then I thought, well, what the hell, and I entered it anyways. So
Yeah, same here. I just had the one. I have a trilogy out, but I figured like entering book 3 would be pretty wacky, and also not allowed. But yeah, I just had the one book. But the reason I entered this year is just because I'd seen it floating around on a few Facebook groups. And beforehand, I always thought that it was one of the. I think there's another one where it like costs money to enter, and I'm super cheap, so I didn't want to pay money to have my book raked over coals. And then I saw that it was free, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just do it. And luckily enough, I stay up super late, and the entrance thing, as soon as it opened, I just clicked through. Yep, cool, submitted. I can go to bed. And I didn't realize that it was like 30 seconds, and then it was done. It was like 40 minutes or something, but yeah, so it was just pure luck.
I mean, yeah, for me, I had several that I could have chosen from, but of those, Last Fang just felt like, to me, it was my favorite of the stories, and it was the one I felt best represented what I was capable of at that time. So it was a fairly straightforward decision for me.
Yeah. I had started writing Hills in March of 2022, and I was like, I don't know when this is going to be finished. And then by the end of that year, I was like, you know what? It's almost done. I should hurry it up and then get it ready for the next SPFBO. So yes, I did finish that book based on when SPFBO was happening. But it was also kind of a rush decision of, should I do this? And then I was like, well, we'll just see how far we get with this book. And yeah, that was pretty much all my decision-making plans for that.
Sounds like pretty much all of you had the one choice and decided to go for it, which I love. Respect that. I said to the previous panelists, like, I have so much respect for people who enter this competition because, as Ed said, there's a lot of opinions and there's a lot of people saying them. So you just have to be prepared for that, and could never be me. So definitely lots of respect for putting your work out there. But that also leads me to my next question, which is, you guys have entered before, but this time is a bit different as your finalists, and that's a very unique experience, right? As PL mentioned before, that's where the tension kind of ramps up. That feels like maybe there's a spotlight on you. There's a lot of great semifinalists, but I think when the finalists come out, it's like a half a year of you guys waiting to hear what the result is. So I'm curious if this year there were any surprises, anything that you didn't expect from this experience that you got being a finalist or the competition as a whole. If there's anything specific about SPFBO 9 that you're like, oh, I didn't expect that.
Oh, I guess I can go with that one. So definitely being a finalist was a surprise because it was October 29th that it was announced. I woke up and someone's like, congrats on being a semifinalist. And, it's the end of kind of where they need to finish picking their semis and finalists. So I was like, oh, yay, awesome. So I got the logo all done and was like, well, I got to go to surgery next tomorrow, so it'll be fine. I'll be cut, whatever. And then I like wake up before my surgery and they're like, you made finalists. I'm like, what is happening? So literally I was only semi-finalist for like 24 hours. So I'm like, I don't know how to process this. Is this happening? And then I had that whole week to kind of be like, I just still don't know what's happening.
You wasted so much time making the badge, like you're photoshopping that, making it perfect, and then it's just like,
yep. And I still have not put the sticker on my ebook at all. Like Connor wasted no time on his, and I'm just like, I guess I'll put it on there. It's on the Amazon page, but not on the actual book yet. Because I was like, I don't know if this is really happening. But and then as far as like the competition goes, I loved our Discord. It was so much fun. I didn't think we would talk about food as much as we did, but I love food, and it was great. But then also the competition itself, because being like tied with so many people for so long was just like, oh, cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Maybe we'll all tie. That'll be great. We'll break the whole competition. And this will be the last year that they do this because we've broken it. But then to all of a sudden be kind of launched to the top was also a real surprise. I was like, oh, what? And to be tied for first place was also just wild to me. So
yeah, I mean the final points were insane. 0.05 between you and Morgan.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
wild.
It was like the night before. It's like it could go either way, and I'm prepared for whatever's happening. But for it to be that close, I was like, my goodness, what is happening? But yes, I fully support Morgan winning because that is an amazing book. I really loved it. Everyone's a winner in this competition, but I was like, what is this point system? Where are we? What is happening? I'm like, I can't do this.
Well, even on the judges' side, we're all like, what's happening? Because we don't know what the other people are going to say. So
confusing on all sides.
Yeah.
I actually really felt for the judging team sometimes, because like you get the ones where it's one person that's probably, I mean, it's hard because you got to read that many books, but when you have that many different people doing reviews and then having to aggregate the scores, and then you've then got to take all those and average those as well, it's like way too much math. Like I was not prepared for how, like I would go into the scoreboard and Mark would have the things out and I'd be like, okay, cool. So I'm at like whatever I was at, and I would go, okay, but then I'd have 3 more reviews to go. So if I was to get to the top of that, I would have to earn this many, and try and do the math. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'll just take it as it is. Like, it's just way too much effort. But yeah, I was really surprised by that. Like how many, even within those blog groups, you'd have someone in it that would rate a book like really high, and then you'd have someone else that would rate it really low, proportionally, and then it would like average out. And so yeah, it's really weird. I think Mark did the breakdown of how people deviated, how much, whatever the term for that is, like the difference in the scores across blogging groups and then across each other to work out who sort of hewed closer to like the average. It's really interesting, like that side of things. I was really surprised at how much thought goes into that. But the rest of it, yeah, it was all just surprising, like getting to finals and all of it. So
it's a labor of love.
Time, yeah, like I have no real point of comparison either. It's like the first time, so I'm like, okay, this is how it is. But yeah, Spiffbox 10 needs a 10-way tie. That is how it has to go down.
I was surprised by how distracting being a finalist was, and for how long that distraction lasted. Generally speaking, I feel like I've been doing this long enough that I am pretty good at being able to focus in on getting my writing done every day. But there was definitely something about being a finalist that definitely threw that for a loop for at least a month or two for me. And I eventually needed to make a rule that I just needed to kind of not pay too much attention to the competition for several months so that I could get work done. Because, yeah, it does feel like you have a lot of eyes on you, much more so than I was expecting, I guess. Clayton, of course, is a veteran. He's used to having all eyes on him. Sorry, Clayton. I'm just going to sit here and make fun of you all night.
No, that's fine. I'm used to that. There weren't a lot of surprises for me. I've kind of been in this boat before. For me, it was kind of realizing like Ryan mentioned, how much it affected my writing, where I wasn't getting anything done for months on end. The amount of gray hairs had doubled.
Are you up to 4 now?
Oh boy.
They're not hairs on his head though, eh?
Right. That's just because the camera is kind. No, it was it was actually, I was surprised by how, having done it once before, how the level of stress never really drops. It just kind of stays at an even keel, and it's amazing because you're fretting about your book and your scores and your reviews the whole time, and it's, you would think you'd be able to compartmentalize that, and it's just not. It's just always kind of in the back of your mind. So
Well, it's interesting hearing what Ryan said about having to step away, because in part 1, R.K. Ashwick, we were praising her for just being able to not look at reviews. She's like, I didn't read them. It's like, I didn't decide to engage with that, which, so like, that's just something I don't usually hear, because I do think that SPFBO is unique in that you're kind of expected to engage with the reviews, not engage with, but read the reviews, look at them in the way that there's usually, reviewer space and author space. The book world has been insane with that discourse this year, so we're not going to go too much into that. But I am curious if you guys had any moment when you were reading a review, maybe you didn't want to say it on main, so you messaged the group chat, or if there was a moment that a review made you reflect on your writing, or did any review make you feel positively or negatively towards your work upon reflection, right? So, this person had some good points, or I feel like my book didn't get into the right hands, right? So just reflecting on some of the reviews you got, because there's so many, you don't have to name names. Was there ever a moment of reflection or, thought process that you had? Because most authors are kind of not expected. Well, I guess expected is the right word, not to engage directly with reviews. But like I said, this is unique, where you're waiting for them. So I'm curious if any of you had an experience like that.
Yeah, I have one that I can think of right off the bat. I don't know if you've heard of this blog group called Before We Go blog, but no, we actually...
Who's that?
These guys here! We actually did discuss them if they came up. And the weirdest thing for me was I was usually more, I don't really get mad if about reviews. I'll read them. I'm super egotistical, so of course I want to read about my own book, but I'm not going to I don't get mad. I think there was maybe one time I was like, they literally described the opposite of my book. That stuck in my mind. But the rest of the time, I would actually get really emotional about everyone else's books. So if they're doing really well, and then there's one that's like a 5 or something, I'll be like, you piece of shit. How dare you? I don't know. It was really weird. It was more, It was more just the fact that I kind of wanted everybody to win, and I just wanted everybody to have a good time. Wasn't really reading the reviews. I know we're probably supposed to read reviews for feedback or something, maybe. I don't know, depending on what Twitter says this week. But yeah, it was more just I just wanted to see what people thought and hope that they all align and they're all positive. So
I feel like Ed would have gone to war for us if we would have asked him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. The nice part about this competition is if the scoreboard is updated in time, you can look at that first. So that was my approach to things. If a review dropped, I was like, okay, let's see what the score is, because I can handle this number rather than reading what someone has said about my book. Definitely when I got the 5, that was because it was the first one, the first lowest score. So I was just sat there. I was like, this is it. So I had other friends outside of the Discord kind of reading them, please just tell me the Spark Notes version of this. What is the points? But even at the end of it, it's just it wasn't the right book for that reviewer. And that's totally fine. I don't think it was anything with my book, this is a terrible book, it shouldn't have been written kind of thing. So I had to kind of accept that. But it was also kind of the same thing that I was saying is when someone else gets a really low, we made the 5 club. It was not a fun club to be in, but once you got a score of 5, high fives all around, clubs within clubs. But when someone gets a low score, it's like, oh darn, I hate that for you, because you want the book to do well, because we're all here in this space, and because we're constantly moving on the scoreboard, it looks kind of sad when someone's moving down on there. So, but we did kind of figure out like a good way of posting the reviews and then kind of hiding the score from people who didn't want to see it. And so we would all kind of, if it was like Ed's book, we'd all read it and say like, here are the high points, here are some of the other things. But I will say Philip's one definitely made me a little bit emotional. Actually John's too, there were some really good ones. I was like, oh wow, because I was just stunned. I was like, wow, did not expect to get that good of a score, because I set my expectations really low. Like, we're here as a finalist, but are we really here as a finalist? We don't know. But kudos to all the bloggers for reading just so many books. And so I know at the end of it you have 6 months, but it's not a whole lot of time, it feels like. And then to immediately jump into the next SPFBO is also a lot. So I'm sure all that reading and whatever space they're in mentally in life, it's like maybe that book doesn't hit well for them, and I totally get it. So it was a fun exercise in being objective, but also learning to take what pieces of stuff was valuable from the review for me personally. But yeah, I like to take more of the good stuff than than the critical stuff, especially if it's not a critique on my writing style. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been doing this long enough that it's a self-preservation thing for me to only read reviews that are 4 and 5 stars, because otherwise I might lose my mind at this point. So anything that kind of translated into that, I was pretty happy to read. Anything else, I just kind of looked at the score and went, oh, okay, that's fine, and then moved on. So, again, purely self-preservation. It's not that I want to reject input but I'm the longer I do it, the more I realize reviews are for the readers, and it's less about what I'm doing as to how they're going to enjoy it. So,
Yeah, I think for me, one of the toughest parts of being an author who's getting so many wonderful reviews is that when you are sitting down to write a book, you are writing with, every scene to have a certain intent, and for the book to have a certain intent. And inevitably, at times, whether it's because you aren't quite clear enough, or maybe your skill just isn't quite where you need it to be to make your point, the reviewer misses what you intend. And I think that is helpful, because it also shows like where you need to improve to make sure that as many readers as possible can catch that intent. But I think those are always the hard ones for me. And I think it kind of echoes what Ed was saying a little bit about reviewers posting the opposite of what happened in the books. And for me, it's just, it hurts the most when you feel like your intent was not understood. And so, but it's also probably the greatest learning experience, because that's where you have to get better then.
Yeah, I think in the other chat, didn't someone say, can't remember who, that it's actually a good thing to go through and take notice of who gave your book a higher score, or like discuss the things that you really wanted people to get from it, and like put them on a little thing and just be like, okay, these are the people that I like offer like art copies or whatever, review copies to. And I was thinking I should do that, but I completely forgot. So I'm glad that Mark has the table that you can click all the links and go through. So I can like find who those people were, hit them up with some of my book. Except that if they hate that, I'm going to feel so terrible. It'll be even worse.
A for effort, though, regardless.
Yeah. Maybe in that regard.
I think that was actually Crystal in the chat who I pulled up her comment, and then we discussed it. Saying that retroactively, it helped her.
So it's like reviews are for
it's
the
almost
reader,
like,
but you can use them too. Oh, sorry, yeah. So they're for the reader, like absolutely. But as an author, you can use them in so many different ways. Like you can use them on blurbs, but you can also use them to like figure out who your audience is. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. It's almost like a catch-22, right? Because you want that spotlight. Like you said, getting a lot of eyes on your book is the point of the competition. But with more eyes comes more different different types of people, right? So you're going to get the whole spectrum.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but somebody had pointed out that, you know, if you're not getting 1-2 stars, you know, in a fair amount, that you're probably not reaching a wide enough audience. If your scores are only 4 and 5s, you're only hitting the people that like your book, or you're hitting a small group of people, and it's not, you're not pushing that out enough. So
now this next question is a little bit sillier, but I asked it to the first panel, so I wanted to ask it here. And this is specifically for Katie and Ed, because I think three of the panelists had initials, right, in their names in the first panelists. And this time it's you two. And it's something that I'm seeing a lot more in the self-pub world. More and more. I don't know. It's just something that I'm noticing. And just the percentage of finalists that have them. I'm curious, is there a story behind it? Like, conspiracy? What's going on?
It's always a conspiracy with me.
Oh my goodness. So for me personally, when I was trying to pick my author name, I was like, well, Katie Andrews doesn't really stand out as much. I guess I could have gone with Catherine Andrews. It just sounds a little bit more formal. And then of course the age-old thing that I'd heard for women in fantasy is like, use your initials because then they won't know you're a woman. But there's not a whole lot of guy names that start with a K. So I'm like, well, whatever. But I just liked how my initials looked a lot better than just my regular name. So I just went with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Vibes is a good answer. So,
I think
just
Katie should have swapped the E for a T, and then it would have been Katie Andrews. And I should have swapped the C for a D, and then it would have been Ed Greaves, and we would have been sorted. But
that would have worked.
Yeah, C's just my middle name initial, and I thought, well, you know, EC Greaves it sounds a lot more professional than Ed. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a very professional name. I'm not a very professional person though, so I suppose that would have been fair. But it's been fun when people tried to figure out what the E stood for, or the C, and then I just was like, oh, just call me Ed, it's fine. But my full name's Edmund, and I didn't want all the like Edmund Hillary Narnia kid comparisons. But yeah.
I'm ashamed to say that is where my brain went when I heard Edmund.
I think I'm actually named for the Narnia kid, so. He's the little shit as well, right? He's like the bad brother.
I was gonna say,
I hope into a dragon.
Oh yeah.
Well, there you go. Everyone's dream.
Yeah, sell out my family.
So with the first panelists, I also did this, but now it's time to do this to you guys as well. I did a little bit of research into your websites, and I pulled out a couple points that I had an individual question for each of you, if you'll humor me. And if this, sparks a different conversation, by all means, we can go into that. But I wanted to start actually with Clayton, because Cold West is the first book that I've read by you. I know typically you sit in the dark world with what you write. But Cold West is... Who hurt you? Okay, that book is so brutal. And it was the finalist that came from Before We Go blog, right? So this is coming from someone whose blog actually, put your book into the finalist sphere. And it's a perfect example of how different people reading a book is important before choosing, in my opinion. Because for me, even though it wasn't like the best glowing 5 stars for me because of what it did what it did so well that my respect is enormous for what you've written. I just wasn't ready for it. And so I know a lot of other people who really, really connected to what you did there. And one of those things, at least from my perspective, is an exploration of madness that is set in a Western atmosphere. And I'm curious for you, 1, why did you choose to explore that theme? And 2, why a Western? I'd never read a Western before, and a lot of grimdark in my mind, or dark fantasy, isn't set in that setting. Maybe I just haven't found those books yet, but it was so unique in what it did. I'm curious where those came from.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Yeah, as far as why, Western, I think it was a little bit of 2 things. One, I grew up with my grandfather really loving like Louis L'Amour and Larry McMurtry and all those guys. And I remember sitting with him Sundays and watching Westerns every Sunday. And then, I grew up and I started watching stuff like the darker stuff, 310 to Yuma, Bone Tomahawk, Unforgiven. And Unforgiven really kind of struck a chord with me. I wanted to do something similar, kind of explore this darkness that people have inside them. And then as far as exploring it, boy, I got a lot of alphabet diseases, to be honest. OCD, BPD, ADHD, it's all kind of there. So it's easy for me to kind of look at the things that I've gone through and the years of therapy, and just kind of draw on all of that and pull it into the character and just kind of the personal pain that goes along with a lot of that stuff. Not to mention the loss and everything else. So yeah, that all kind of just built the perfect storm for that book. So.
And, we're going to stay very far away from spoilers here, but the ending is kind of left open-ended, in my opinion, at least, for the reader to think about what happened. Was that something that you wanted to do specifically, or, you wanted the reader to draw a conclusion, or was it just, this is the only way that this story can end from your perspective?
No, there were a couple. I mean, I had a couple choices as far as where I could go with it, and this is where I wanted to go. I wanted to leave it open ended. I wanted people to make their own interpretation, and I wanted to leave the possibility that maybe there's another story there, down the road. So.
Oh, teasers for those who are Cold West. Maybe there's another one.
Names in the Discord.
We've all been trying to convince him to write Frozen North ever since.
Frozen North, Humid South.
That has a ring to it. I'm just saying.
It's a dark fantasy romance. Humid South.
Dark fantasy romance.
Different genre in each direction. There's like Tepid East is like a real romance.
Moist West.
Oh God. Yes.
That's true horror. There's no coming back from that one.
No,
true horror.
The whole book is soggy. It's horrible.
Okay. Next in the gamut is Ryan. So I checked out your website, and it's a very professional looking website, first of all. So props for that. But I do see that you're very active with your newsletter. And in your newsletter, you advertise that you write a lot of short stories in the worlds that your novels take place in. So I'm curious, as someone who writes a lot of novels and also a lot of short stories, how do you approach those two different storytelling mediums differently? Is there a different mindset you get into? How do you approach those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, I really started getting interested in short stories probably 2 or 3 years ago, mostly because I felt like at the time my actual prose was stagnating and not getting much better. And being full-time and like trying to make a living, there's always that pressure to like continue pushing out the next book. And so I was very excited by the opportunity to use short stories as a chance to improve and get better. And one fun fact about my short stories is that I actually handwrite all of them instead of type them, because I find that when I am typing, sometimes it is very easy for me to just type very, very fast and not really think too much about what I am writing. And so with the short stories and the handwriting, it forces me to slow down, think about what I'm writing, and to try to write much better and more deliberately. And I'm hoping that over time, more of that transfers over to the novels as well. And so I can keep becoming a better writer.
Yeah, that's so badass. It's a way to prove that you're not AI, right? Like you write hand. Eventually all novelists will write all their books by hand. We'll photocopy them and send them out.
So the first time one of my short stories gets accused of it, I'll just be able to scan up the
show them your wrist X-rays.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the great thing about the short
I'm so
stories,
sorry
too,
that
is
my connection went out for a second there. I apologize.
No,
I'm
no
back though. So just want you guys.
We kept ourselves entertained.
Sorry, Clayton, I cut
Sorry.
you off.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, I was just saying one of the great things about short stories, though, is that they work, they can work great as character studies or environmental studies or any of those things, vignettes that really help you kind of dig deeper into your world or your characters and kind of build on that, and at the same time, yeah, you're improving your prose, but you're also improving your storytelling and anything else, so.
I mean, I don't know if this happens to anybody else too, but I feel like whenever I'm writing a novel, there are so many things that I end up cutting to try to maintain like the flow of the story and the pacing, that I feel like there are a lot of extra things that I want to explore, and short stories are fantastic for being able to do that.
Yeah, and I do apologize if you said this while my connection was gone, but it is a completely different skill set as well. I find that some authors are just brilliant at setting a sense of place so quickly in a page count, whereas a novel, you're supposed to take a couple chapters to do that. At least in my opinion, that's what I like. So
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I am cheating a little bit, because oftentimes they are like the short stories that I write are meant for people who have already read my books, and so it does allow me to shortcut some of that world building in the short story. And that is probably maybe not the best thing for what I'm trying to accomplish, but it does make writing short stories easier than it would be otherwise.
That makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to pull this up. Tori's here.
Hi,
I'm late.
Tori.
Hello and congratulations to the finalists. All right, so this next one is for Ed. So I noticed that something else that you do along with writing is you do music, or you produce music, I believe. And I'm curious, when you're writing, do you have like a soundtrack in your head? Do you find that it affects the way that you write, that you have this other skill set so well developed?
Yeah, I actually have like a playlist for the world of my stories. It's all like Slavic folklore music, and then I have like specific songs for characters or moments that are just regular songs. So if a character's a particularly edgy little teenager, they might have like some Linkin Park or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think about the music that would be playing if the scene I'm writing was a movie or something like that. It's really weird. I don't know. Like I sort of, as I write, I sort of picture the whole thing like as a complete thing I'm watching or a game I'm playing or whatever, like a scene and so it does have a soundtrack. I don't actually really like make any music that I put out anywhere. It's my flatmate Martin. I don't put music out anywhere anymore. But when I was in a band and stuff, it was all like rock music and more metal. But then the stuff I actually make myself was mostly for video games, and so it's a lot more orchestral or that sort of thing. But yeah, I definitely do think in music.
I'm
That's
curious,
so cool.
Ed. Sorry, but with like I've spoken with other authors who are also musicians, and sometimes they talk about how having music playing in the background is actually too distracting for them because they end up paying too much attention to the music instead of doing their writing.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if that is a problem that you ever have.
It has to be music without lyrics or in a language that I can't understand. Otherwise, I just listen to the lyrics and I'm like typing away, and before I know it, it's like making my way downtown, and I'm like, oh, should I just put that in my
That would
novel?
have been a great addition to Daughter of the Beast, honestly.
Yeah, as they're traveling along.
Making my way downtown and my village is on fire.
You need to put a piano in there somewhere.
Yeah. She's just riding on the back of an ox cart with a piano.
Exactly.
Having a blast.
Yeah. That is so cool. Have you ever thought about releasing a soundtrack along with it?
Yeah, I did actually think about that. So like I was making a video game a while back and I made all the music for that, and every single song was it used a leitmotif from the Soviet song Black Raven, which Chorny Voron, and I used that as this repeating motif throughout the whole soundtrack. And I was like, I should do the same thing for Daughter of the Beast, but I need to find some sort of folklore song to crib from to make it cool. But yeah, I thought about doing it, but then it's like there's so many random things. And like if I posted that on my author Twitter, I sometimes post drawings and they don't get a whole hell of a lot of traction or anything like that. Like nobody really cares about anything other than books. So I think it's quite hard to like market, I suppose, different, whatever they are, disciplines when you're just an author. But yeah, I'd like to do it. I have songs that I've made for my actual book, just kicking around on my laptop.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I know someone who did that recently was Adrian Gibson for Mushroom Blues. He had like a soundtrack and a bunch of other things connected with it, and it seemed to have a good reception. So I think there'd be an audience for it if you wanted to.
It'd be cool to like try and make it so that you can figure out how long it'll take someone to read a chapter and give them some sort of soundscape that goes along with it. But then I'm like, if you're like super speedy Reader McGee, like you're gonna be like finished the whole book in like the first song, be like, this mood doesn't match. And if you're like super slow, you have to like repeat this shit to the point where you hate the songs.
Well, you could chapter headings.
Give each chapter its own song, and then only have 3 chapters in the book.
Now that would be so cool, truly.
Yeah.
I did want to pull up Daniel's comment. Steven Erickson is the only author I know who says he has to have great lyrics in the music he listens to while writing. I don't even like to have lyrics in reading music. I agree with that.
Yeah, same.
I can't do it. And last but certainly not least, Katie. I saw on your website that I believe it's Love Story. You volunteer or work at something called Love Story, which is helping people working through trauma through therapeutic journaling. And when I saw that you do that, I was like, zero surprise here, because I, full disclosure, had to DNF Heather and Bone because of how well the exploration of trauma was written there, because it's a little too close to home for me right now. So anyone watching this, it is not anything against the book. It's actually for the book that I had to DNF it, because it was just so well put on the page. I was like, I can't do this right now. So I was not surprised at all to learn that you help other people through working through trauma. So I'm curious if you think that experience has helped you with Heather and Bone, if they're connected, anything like that.
Yeah, so I had started with the company in 2019 because I was just going through a bunch of stuff. And so that really got me into poetry because that was how I best kind of journaled. And that was mostly our project was just like trying to take whatever you've gone through, good, bad, whatever, and set it almost to like a fiction kind of thing while still retaining parts of the story that are true to you. So I was doing that in my own poetry and compiling that into a book. So it's just like, okay, poetry is basically just you're trying to highlight a feeling, an emotion, a sense of something, and convey it in, some lyrical or not lyrical form, just depending on what the poem is and what the vibes are. So I really kind of took that into the rest of my writing. And people ask sometimes, like, how has poetry helped with fantasy? It's like, it just teaches you how to really hone in on a moment. And I'm all for like emotions in books, especially like character driven and stuff. So I just kind of carried that into the rest of my fantasy. And I love books that focus on kind of like the mental health aspect of characters, because sometimes I'm like, if George R. R. Martin's characters went to therapy, we wouldn't have a book, which would be, honestly really great. And if they talked about their emotions in a healthy way, not saying we have to do that, because then there'd be no plot. But, just how can we explore these things in fiction, even if we've not gone through them? We've all experienced pain in something, and so it shapes us in some sort of way. So I really think that organization has helped me kind of dive into like the things that I've gone through, but also understanding like how to relate to others, and especially in like a fiction setting, even if it's, it's a constructed character, but, generating that sense of empathy, which is the fun part of reading for me. It's like, even if I do not agree with this character's actions, I can kind of maybe find the line of, I understand where they're coming from, even though they're poor decisions.
Yeah, I can say from experience reading it, I mean, that empathy, that time that you take to sit with the characters and work through things, it's beautifully written. It really is. So I'm not surprised that John and Philip had the reaction that they did. It shines through on the page, what you just mentioned. So
thank you.
For sure. Of course. Now, as always with these interviews, time. Okay, we're over an hour. I don't want to keep you guys so long. So I kind of want to shift to talking about the future a little bit here. I know that PL already asked about your intentions for possibly entering again, but I want to ask you guys a question for people watching who maybe want to enter themselves, whether it's Spiffbox or any in the future. Do you have any advice for hopeful entrants, whether it be how to choose the book you want to enter, how to prepare yourself for the gamut of everyone's opinions and reviews? Just any advice that you have for any point in the process for someone who's looking to enter, and anyone can take that.
I would definitely say, go.
Okay,
No, go. Rock, paper,
I was going to
scissors.
start so that all the good answers weren't taken already.
No, you go. You can have first pick.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, I feel like the wonderful thing about SPFBO is that, in a sense, the competition can become what you want to make of it. I know, like, other authors kind of throw their book in the competition, wait for their review to come out, and then that's basically the extent of their involvement. But SPFBO has become such a rich community that I would fully encourage anybody who is doing it to follow along with the first chapter reads, like subscribe to the blogs, subscribe to the YouTube channels, watch everything that's coming out, because you will get a fantastic education about the indie space, and you'll meet a lot of wonderful people. So that would be my suggestion. Now you can go, Katie. Sorry.
No, it's good. For me personally, like, it's called a competition, but really I think if you start viewing your other fellow authors as competition and like, I have to be better, or, if I don't get a good review, it means my book is lesser, then you do miss out on that community. Because, it's not like, oh my gosh, you only get one book a year and they have to pick my book kind of thing. It's like there's something for everyone. And when one book does good, like that's exciting for all of us because it shows just like what indie authors are capable of. And I feel like it's just a magnet for other books in this competition. So just seeing like everyone as we're all in this together. Yes, it would be nice to win. And yes, there's only one winner, but when books don't do well or when books do well, you want to be there for those people and support them along the way, even if it's not a book that you would personally ever read. Just saying like, hey, look at this cool thing this person's created. We're all here together. Cue High School Musical song. And, it's just that makes the competition so much more fun. And that, especially in the finalist bubble of, we know there's going to be one winner, but we all want to see everyone else do well.
Okay.
Don't everyone go all at once.
I'll go. I'm going to say, I'm just going to hammer on the community thing again. I mean, make of it what you will, but SPFBO at the end of the day is about community, and it's about rising tide lifts all boats. So, on the human side, that's definitely important. On the book side of things, if you are prone to anxiety, go to your doctor and get a Xanax prescription because so that's pretty much all the advice I have to give anybody. You ride it out and you enjoy the ride. So
yeah, it's the same thing. I was just going to go last so that I can say what they said. But I do think that like another thing to do before you enter is just to like give your book a quick pass and just make sure that everything is fine. I released mine in this and I didn't realize, but somehow in changing something in like the files, I'd like deleted a whole bunch of the quote marks at the ends of like, or the starts of paragraphs. Like when it did a paragraph break on the ebook, they were gone. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't even notice. And then a couple of people pointed it out and I was like, oh shit, that's the actual copy that I like submitted. And the previous version hadn't had that problem. But so it's like things like that, like do a lot of little housekeeping things just before you enter, make sure everything's fine, or your files work, all your social links work. Actually have social media presence as well. Like I don't really use Twitter or anything until this competition, and then I was like, okay, this is really, really cool. I think Mark Lawrence even posted out about his reach, and it was like Goodreads versus Twitter and stuff, and it was like the amount of interaction he gets is way higher on Twitter. And yeah, it might feel like you're just authors talking to other authors and whatever, but this is indie, right? Like we all read books, so your author friends are also readers too, and you know, the fact that we can like talk to people like you, Taylor, and actually like not during the competition, but you know, you make friends with people. It really is, and it's not just other writers. It's people who read your books, people who read other people's books, and people who review them and whatever. It's super valuable for that. So do it, like especially since it's like lottery. If you don't get in, you can just be like, machine. It's not my fault.
Right.
Blame it on the algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, Twitter really does seem to be a hub, despite everyone's efforts to the contrary. You know, it's just nothing else seems to stick. And now I have to post on 3 different places because a couple people did leave, and I don't want to lose those people. So that's a whole different discussion of a booktuber trying to get her shit out there. But but I did want to
as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's
for sure. It's a different type of hard, but yeah, it definitely has its challenges. But I wanted to finish by asking a broader question. So one thing that every single person who talks about this competition or has anything to do with it has in common is we're in the self-pub space. And self-pub has changed drastically over the years. And most typically it's talked about in its contrast to trad. I know that I think, Ed, you mentioned earlier how trad seems to scoop from the hard work of self-pub and indie and then be like, this is ours now, right? So there is sometimes a symbiotic relationship, sometimes not so much between the two. But I do think that self-pub is growing and changing drastically because it has the bandwidth to do so. So I wanted to ask you guys where you see self-pub going from your perspective. Do you see it becoming more of a juggernaut in the wider space? Because all of us who are involved in SPFBO, it is big in the space, but it's not big in the reading world in general, you know? So I'm curious if you guys see it breaking out, if you see it becoming or staying the same size, becoming something that is closer knit. I just wonder, as people on the inside, as authors, what do you see happening? Any trends that you notice?
I definitely noticed with just a couple authors of how many, not necessarily just finalists, but people in the competition have either gone traditional because of this competition, or at least the competition's helped. Like, I mean, look at Ryan Cahill, like he was eliminated real easy, and you know, you wouldn't know now. And like ML Wang now has a traditional deal that's happening. So it's like these awesome things can happen just from this little space. I don't know if it's a direct correlation, but there seems to be a good number of people who have gone through SPFBO who are now either, you know, doing really well or getting traditional deals. So it's like, you never know what could happen. But I definitely think like for the indie sphere, like the flexibility and being able to write kind of what you want shapes, I think, like the reader sphere, because trad will usually seem to follow of like, this is what's hot, we're going to market it towards this and kind of hope that like this seems hot and this is what the readers are reading. But sometimes readers will just pick up something on their own and be like, hey, I really like this. Like with Cozy for that, it's like, who knew? And that was just what people were feeling. And the indie sphere, I think, really capitalized on that a lot quicker than trad could. But they aren't like locked into that. It's like, this has to do well. Otherwise, you know, it's worthless kind of thing. But being able to kind of write what you want in a way that you want, I think resonates more with authenticity that readers are really looking for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if it's a thing because I don't really keep an eye on the traditional publishing market, but is lit RPG a thing in tradpub? Yeah, it is. I don't know. Because it was a huge thing in indie.
It's huge in indie. I haven't seen it yet, and at least like not to my knowledge in trad.
Like I wouldn't be surprised.
Cradle got a trad deal, didn't it?
Did it?
I think it did. And that was like one of the biggest indie ones. I'm blanking on the author's name. What a good interviewer I am. No, but he's huge. He doesn't need my marketing. Yeah, Cradle's author. I'm not sure if that's trad.
Yeah. It's not trad.
Will White. There you go.
He's indie.
All right.
He's indie. He's indie.
It's one of the good
And then
ones.
no, I would say no. Yeah. I haven't
Okay.
seen it.
Yeah. See, I always think that it will copy the trends, I suppose, just because of that. That's the way it works with games, music, all that sort of thing. But I do think of the indie book scene in the same way that I think of indie games. You know, like you have your Call of Duties and your Assassin's Creed 6004 or whatever they're up to, and they're these juggernauts. They just print money, and so traditional studios don't want to change, and so I suppose they just chase that. Whereas then you get in the indie sphere, you have things like that Balatro card game or whatever, sold like millions. The dude that made this, he's made gazillions of dollars just from this fluke breakout hit, and you'll find that in indie, I think, because it's not sort of designed by committee, or you don't have the pressures to fit the mold or whatever. You have a lot more flexibility to pivot or just to chase weird unicorn ideas that you'd never be allowed to get away with. So there's that. But then I also think, I think people see them as like indie versus trad, but really all they are is just the method by which you turn your art and creativity into money, really. Like you're selling books essentially. And so I think if as it goes on, we're going to see a breakdown between the barriers. I wouldn't be surprised if things like cover art and editing and stuff move to a royalty-based, like a percentage share model. Because I've noticed that audiobooks, there's that. Like it used to be that you just pay the person to record your stuff. Now they can have a royalty share system. And I wouldn't be surprised if those sorts of things happen, which would then lower the barrier to entry for indie authors who, aren't so flush with cash from their SPFBO finalist position. They can fork out. But yeah, no, it's that I think as because the digital space and more people are moving towards that sort of thing, then people are going to be able to democratize publishing or whatever they call it. And I do think that that's going to happen. And yeah, I hope it does, because it would be cool just to see more stuff happening. I think there's the whole topic about AI and all that sort of thing. I think there are people who are rightfully rejecting it and people who aren't. And then there are people who go full witch mob about anything to do with AI instead of just the specific generative things that are cutting people out of jobs or whatever. So I think there's a lot more nuance to be developed, but it's not going to be something that like just immediately happens. It'll gradually move towards that. My wishy-washy way of saying that, I think I'm an optimist, and I think things will get a little bit better for people and a lot easier to get into doing it. I just hope that big corporate doesn't screw it all up like they usually do. So
Here's to hoping.
yeah.
Do you want to take this one first, Clayton?
Sure. I think it's viewed as more out here with trad publishing as it goes. I think Ed had mentioned barriers. I think one of the big barriers for us is going to be being able to be included in stuff like Hugos and Nebulas and so on, to further legitimize the art itself. To create that level playing field. And yeah, it's the other thing about it is the flexibility. It's you can write what you want, and you can, if it fails, you can bounce back and write something else. You don't have to worry about, hey, my career's over now, that sort of thing. So there's definitely a lot of changes that I've seen happen over the past even decade, that are all in the positive. So I can only kind of see them going upwards from there.
Yeah, I feel like there's the future that I would like to see, but I don't think that it is anything near certain. But I think the future that I'd like to see is that independent publishing essentially eats the whole genre of fantasy and makes it its own. I think, as we've seen, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but a week or two ago, there was a piece that went viral on the internet saying that like nobody reads books anymore, and it was from the Penguin Random House trial. And like, I think there's a lot of debate about that piece. We can avoid that, but there's absolutely no doubt that like trad is putting more money behind fewer books than they were in the past, because it's kind of the only method of success they have for their business model. Whereas with indie, we can survive on merit, and we can have our words known. I mean, just see SPFBO and all the success that has come out of that. But yeah, I think that as you see independent fantasy Kickstarters, I mean, what, Rob raised over 100,000 on his. There's been what, even Josiah just raised, I don't even know the number, tens of thousands on his.
Zach did really well with his for his omnibus, or the really
yeah. There's just been, I mean, there's been more than I can even keep track of, but I think that between the success of seeing like the Kickstarters, all of that, I just feel like gradually, as long as the field can continue to write just this incredible quality of work, that we will eventually just completely overtake trad, outside of, you know, every time Sanderson poops out a book. But like, I think that's my hope. I think my worry is that with there's always the stigma of independent publishing being trash, and with some of the new tools that allow, we'll say, writing to happen at lightning speed, there's my worry sometimes that stigma will not be as easily dismissed as it should be, because there are a lot of absolutely incredible independent writers out there, far more than even just the semifinalists in SPFBO. There are so many great writers that even were not able to make semifinals. So I want to see independent take over the world.
Well, I thought that'd be a really cool feature. And I also want to make sure I say, which I said in the first panel for anyone watching this, when I say, when we compare trad to indie, which I think people made clear with their answers, but I want to make sure I say it as well. It's not a question of, did you fail to get into trad, therefore your backup was indie or self-pub. Like, that's not the context in which I ask that question. So I just want to make sure everyone watching this knows that, that is not the case. They're two different worlds and they do different things. And how they interact with each other is endlessly interesting. We always seem to come back to this trad versus indie discussion on Page.2 because we talk to so many indie authors and trad authors as well, but it always seems to come up, whoever we're talking to. But I want to, thank you guys once more for coming on. This has been amazing. And if anyone is watching this and wants to read your wonderful works, wants to know what you're doing in the future or find you on socials, I want to give you guys a moment to plug anything coming out.
Morgan.
Oh my gosh, Morgan. Hi.
Champion in the house.
Yes, the champion is here. I just have to say, Morgan, your book, phenomenal. I devoured it in like 1.5 sittings. I don't know what constitutes a half sitting, but I read it real quick. So
just one cheek on the chair.
Yeah, exactly. I was so tense, couldn't sit down all the way. So I wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of sign off, tell people where they can find you, if you have anything coming out, anything you want to plug. Maybe just let the people know where they can find you. Maybe we'll do the same thing as the intro. Do I remember the intro order? I don't think I did. I think it was Katie, Ed, Ryan, Clayton, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Take it away.
Yes. So my books can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, I almost said Instagram. They can be found there. Ingram, because now they have that wonderful little buy link, so you can buy directly from Ingram. My poetry books are wide. My short stories are wide as well. So you can get those ebooks wherever books are sold. I'm working on the sequel in my dark fantasy trilogy. It will come out sometime. I'm aiming for this year. We will see. And then I'm working on a fantasy novella, fantasy western novella. We'll see. Again, during SPFBO, no motivation. Now that we're out of the woods, we can focus.
Clayton inspired fantasy western.
My goal in life is to try and hit as many genres and subgenres as I feel comfortable hitting. So I've already got dark fantasy, we've got cozy-ish fantasy, we're doing fantasy western, see how that happens. Got a little horror short story, you know.
They are just competing to see who can release Hot East quicker. The race is on.
That one really sounds like the romance one, honestly.
Yeah. I suppose it's me next. I am on Twitter as, let me just quickly open that tab, Greaves EC. There you go. And I think my website is EC Greaves, so nice and helpful. .com. I am currently working on a follow-up to the Vashivka trilogy, so Daughter of the Beast, Sister of the Dead, and Mother of the Pond. So I'm working on a follow-up to that, and also a pirate brat book for grown-ups
so
who never quite grew up. Yeah, people who liked Redwall when they were kids and then just never quite grew out of that. So yeah, I'm like halfway through both, and I take a month to do one and then a month to do the next. So hopefully one or either of them will be out by the end of the year, I'm sure. Yeah, it's pretty.
I forgot to mention I'm on Instagram
Redwall
and
was
Twitter.
my life.
Forgot that.
Redwall's, yeah, so good. But I maintain, and I have it on my website even, it's written, it's racism against rats. It's anti-rat propaganda, and I mean to fix that by having the rats be the main characters in this. Because then I can say pirates as well. So, or bill traps.
I'm ready for that joke.
Yeah.
Not the rat slander. Okay. What about you, Ryan?
I think, pretty much all of my books are wide for the most part. I think the best place to find me in general is ryankirkauthor.com. And I would say sign up for my newsletter. We're in the middle of doing a reader-led choose your own story, because you can't say choose your own adventure for fear of trademark infringement. And we're doing that where readers are voting on what happens with every chapter. So come join me.
Okay. I am on Twitter as Clayton Snyder 2. Don't ask.
Clayton Snyder 1.
That is the guy from Lizzie McGuire. That's his actual name. I have a website. It's cw-snyder.com. My books are pretty much all on Amazon. As far as for what I'm working on next, it is, I'm being yelled at to write.
Tori nailed. Nope, Tori's got it.
That's how you're going to enter each SPFBO. Clayton Snyder 3, Clayton Snyder 5.
Oh, this is going to be on my tombstone. Yeah. So the next book is a book that's going to be a little more traditional fantasy, a little more wish fulfillment. I'm very much being yelled at and bullied into writing it because apparently I don't write things that are commercially friendly. So.
You mean Cold West is not kid friendly?
Yeah, it's
so
weird.
Cheery.
It'll be a Disney adaptation in like 10 years or so.
Right.
I'm just imagining a kid like walking through a library right now and seeing like Cold West and being so skinny and being like, "Oh, I can read this book really quick." And it up.
I had to tell my niece that she couldn't read it yet.
When will I be old enough? Never.
Yeah, when you're about to...
Never. As an adult, I was not prepared either.
It's definitely one of those books where you're going to have a reaction. And I think that's a beautiful thing about it. No one that I talk to is like, meh. That was never the reaction.
I think that if someone's like that, they may need to be evaluated because strong
they need to join
that book.
Love Story and work through some stuff, you know?
Yeah, we need to journal through some of your trauma.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. If you are watching this and you don't know who I am, this is my channel, Made Between the Pages. My name is Taylor. You can find me, all of my links for Twitter, Goodreads. I'm an assistant editor at Before We Go blog. You can see my more professional reviews there. Goodreads, you know, I put my thoughts there. Just put it that way. Not necessarily in a professional capacity. Excuse me. I am just so thankful that you guys took the time to come and talk to me today. I know it's a different time of day for everyone here. It's a lot to get all these people together. So one more thank you to Connor, who may or may not still be in the chat, but for getting everyone together. And everyone in the chat who left a comment, who engaged, you guys are who make page twoing what it is. So for those watching now and for those who watch after, thank you for your participation. But for now, I think we're going to head out and we will see you guys in the next episode. Right,
Thanks for having us on, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, of course. I didn't give you guys a chance to speak after that. My apologies. Of course. Literally anytime. All right, we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys in the next